Welcome to another session of the Sea of Glass. Tonight I'd like to talk about the great power of worshiping God and what it means to worship God. If you don't worship God, you're in deep trouble with the Lord, because if you have to worship. And how do you worship God? By believing in the truth, because God is the truth. And he's not a fable that you see somewhere, like a big man with a long beard. And he's not Jesus, and he's not Muhammad, and he's no pope, and he's nothing like that. God is the spiritual power of the truth that lives inside of you. And if you don't worship it, now you tell a Catholic, you worship God. Oh yeah, but they don't worship the truth. You know, the great power of the truth is to be able to understand, and more than understanding, is the creation of the understanding that comes from this divine power. It's a divine power that lives inside of a human being, and it's make what we call the truth. It has to make sense inside your soul. It has to make common sense inside your soul, and if you don't do that, you're going to become a slave in the lane of stupidity, fabrication, and ignorance. And you can worship all these religions that you want to, but if you don't worship God, you're going to be, things will not go well for you in life. You will not be part of the kingdom of intelligence. And if you're not part of the kingdom of intelligence, you can't understand what God is. And if you can't understand what God is, these are the things that this world wants you to believe, the understanding. Okay, read a little bit about this, and we discussed that pretty good.
Okay, for people following at home in your Bibles, we're doing Deuteronomy chapter 13, worshiping other gods. If a prophet or one who foretells by dreams appears among you and announces to you a miraculous sign or wonder, and if the sign or wonder of which he has spoken takes place, and he says, "Let us follow other gods, gods you have not known, and let us worship them," you must not listen to the words of that prophet or dreamer.
You got to understand now that if the understanding does not make sense, it's not the truth. You know, like the Catholic Church, you know, they really giving a lot of stuff, try to tell us that the priest molested children and everything else. But who's responsible for that? Who is the one that's responsible for that? You know, for centuries now, for almost a millennium and a half, they forbid men to have sex with a woman because they were priests. There was this, there was that. It was only in Oregon that they do that. You know, so who is responsible for the molestation of children? It's the church that's the one that make rules on other people for no purpose whatsoever. What was the purpose of that? It was just to collect the money when the priest died, and then they had no widow to take care of. What was it all about? Why is these people in this world forbid another man to have a woman in his bed now? What kind of a situation is that? That's not worshiping God. They were worshiping themselves, and they were trying to make people understand that you are not allowed to have a woman because you're a priest. You were not a priest to begin with. All this stuff was fabrication of stupidity and ignorance. So now the church is in deep trouble, and it deserves to be in deep trouble. And I wish, in the Lord my God, that this church, you know what I mean, falls down as soon as it can to try to save the people. You take all these people that are walking around with a Catholic head, and they have not a clue of what this is all about. They have not a clue of what they're going to do when the church falls down. And the church is totally not preparing them for what's coming. They know what's coming. They know that the church will come to fall. It's written so in the book of Revelation, the great prostitute. What makes a prostitute? You see, what they did is they took sex and they called it adultery. Sex became adultery. Who in the world told him that sexuality was adultery? Because they did not understand a damn word of the Old Testament or the New Testament. They didn't have a clue what they were talking about. And they fabricated all this stuff. Now they're in trouble. And they tried to get people to slip it underneath the rug. Don't talk about it too much because that will destroy the church. Put it underneath the rug where it belongs. You see, the church has been so evil so long that it's almost unbelievable. And the people, it's not the priests that were evil. It's not the people that are evil. It's what they were taught by the evil church, the great Babylon, mother of all prostitute. What do they mean about prostitute there? It means when you teach something that's outside the content of truth, it becomes prostitution because they don't worship the Lord God. They worship some fabrication that they made up themselves and try to impose laws on people and impose rules on people. These rules that they impose on people are part of a distinguished ignorance of fabrication that they made throughout the whole span of their existence. You see, they were so big, they were so huge, and so many people practice their faith in the understanding that one day the fabrication of stupidity will come alive. You see, when they talk about the 7 sacraments, the power of fabrication that they made out of it is, it's sickening to be able to understand that. It's the most bizarre thing that you can ever imagine, that a person would say, well, I got the power of magic to change water into holy water. I can forgive sin. I have that power. Where did he get that power? Nothing. From nowhere. This is a fabrication of stupidity. Oh, I bless a piece of bread that I made the body of Christ out of it. You see, the thing is with the Catholic Church and Christianity and all this thing that people have, all the stupidity, marry people with a blessing of the hand. Making a priest with a blessing of the hand. Oh my God, they went through this great ceremony and he became a priest, and they did all kinds of fabrication that made them a priest, and the same thing with life after death. They claim the salvation that if you believe in this church, you will go to heaven when you die. It's a fabrication. It's not the truth. The truth is that you go to the ground and the power of you in the ground, receive life from the way of life. There's nothing wrong with the way the creation was created. A baby's born, an old man die, and that's the way it is. Now you got to let your flesh go to the ground and rot in the ground so you can receive a new life again. That's the way it's been from the very beginning of the creation. Nobody can change that. Now, who is these people that wants to change the creation of the Lord? Tell a man that he can't have a woman in his bed. Tell a man that he's not allowed to have sex all of his life. He's not allowed to masturbate. He's not allowed to do any of these things because he's a priest. Now, what kind of a fabrication of stupidity? If you want to mess with sexuality, sex is not a sin. Sex of the flesh is really not a sin, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's not also a game. It's not also that. It's pre-creation, and it's also a very hard, tough feeling inside of a human being. If you mess with that, you destroy the creation. You destroy the facts of life. You destroy the understanding with lies and stupidity and ignorance. And when you do that, you break the very sovereign power of the Lord. You try to make God and play God with, oh yeah, these people are going to sacrifice themselves, and so they can become the children, the children of God when they died. All the lies that you can fabricate to screw the human being out of his righteous love of the Lord. See, loving God is loving your feelings. And the great power of loving your feelings is to be able to understand the feelings of humanity. To be able to understand that a man is made in flesh and blood. And you're going to say, well, we're not animals. Yes, we are. We are just as animal as the cow and the bull with the cow and the dog. And we are animal. But we have a power to understand that. And that makes it special above the other animal. It doesn't mean that you don't have the same need as the animal. It means that you can understand it, and you can understand the way it is in the life of the Spirit. To be able to live within the glory of human intelligence is a great gift, but to be able to understand that we are an animal, and our animal be the great feelings for the understanding of flesh. You can't separate flesh from the feelings, because if you do, you separate the wedding feast of intelligence. To them, they made a wedding feast of the earth, of the animal, and they cannot humanize it to the spiritual power of the understanding of it. So what they do, they create and fabricate stuff and destroy the very simple of feeling itself. Now, if these priests now that molested these children all over the world would have had women in their bed, it wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have happened because somebody messed up with sexuality somewhere. And that person that messed up with society somewhere is the church and religion and all these people that preaches religion on the concept that we are not an animal. Well, I tell you, the truth is that we are animal. And unless you accept the facts that we are an animal, because we eat like an animal, we go to the bathroom like an animal. So we are an animal in the spiritual. You take the greatest person on the face of the earth goes to the bathroom like everybody else, because we are part of the human species and part of all the other animals of the earth. So of course we have intelligence. Of course we can come to understand. We have the spiritual power of rising above that animal and understand things in the most perfect and understanding of the truth itself. But you got to come to understand that you cannot mess around with the creation of the Lord. You cannot separate male and female from one another, and you're going to have problems. That's where all these problems comes from. Where do you think all these things come from? Now, most of these priests became priests because of arrogance. They wanted to prove to the world that they're big boy and they don't need to have sex, and so they make a vow against their own sexuality. The nun made a vow against their own sexuality, and there's been problems for the past 1,700 years of the most stupidity of all that you can ever imagine. You know, why is the church are so dumb and so stupid? And they fabricate something that's as dumb as separated male and female from their bed. This is the great power of not worship. You worshiping a false god in the land of a false god. Go ahead, Rita.
Okay, the reason for not listening to the words of that prophet or dreamer. The Lord your God is testing you. He's testing you to find out whether you love him with all your heart and with all your soul. It is the Lord your God you must follow, and him you must revere. Keep his commands and obey him. Serve him and hold fast to him. That prophet or dreamer must be put to death because he preached rebellion against the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt and redeemed you from the land of slavery. He has tried to turn you from the way the Lord your God commanded you to follow. You must purge the evil from among you.
You see, you got to come to understand that God is the feeling that's inside of you. If the Lord commands you something, that means that's a feeling that's inside of you. And if you go contradict that feelings and try to escape the reality of being an animal, then you're going to break the laws of the understanding of the creation of God. God made you in the understanding of his feelings, and he sends it to you. Now, why would God create a man that has all these feelings for the female scepter, and all the female has feeling for the, and tell them that they're forbidden to happen. What kind of a God would do that? If he gave you something as good as sex, and you go and you say to him, I don't want that. I'm going to worship another God that tells me I don't do that. So you worship the church. See, that's what another God is. If you're Catholic, you're under God's curse. If you're Christian, you're under God's curse. You cannot escape that, because the Lord is the Lord of feelings. And if you don't feel inside yourself the truth and the understanding of your feeling, then you worshiping a false God. You're not worshiping one true God. You're worshiping a God that doesn't exist. You know, you're worshiping what the church fabricate and what the false prophets are fabricating, telling you that what you should not do and do what they tell you to do. But the thing is that the great power of a human being, you cannot break the great glory of human intelligence. You cannot break the creation of the Lord. You can break the fabrication of stupid people that comes in the name of the Lord, but then they fool you with the feelings of ignorance and stupidity that's outside the creation. If you want to believe in God, you have to believe that these feelings that's inside of you are true feelings, and they're there. And I tell you, you got to understand what the great power of that. If you're crossing the Red Sea on dry land, you're not supposed to go to the right or to the left. You're supposed to stay on the dry lane. You're not supposed to be a good doer. And you're not supposed to be a criminal that hurt people. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to walk on dry land. Dry land, you are part of the understanding that you are more than an animal. But you got to understand that all the good deeds in the world does not bring you to the Lord. And all the evil of the world cannot bring you to the Lord. If you want to have the Lord in your soul, you got to listen to his truth. And his truth tells you that you're not allowed to step outside the way that he made in the Red Sea. He made you a path of logical understanding. And if you cross that logical on the right or on the left, you become a minister of Christianity, you're on the right good doers. And that's why you see so many of these break up to pieces today in the world that we live in. You know, minister that kills their wife for another woman and their little parish and their little nest of stupidity and ignorance. Now these guys preach, Jesus loved you and Jesus is that. See, Jesus is not God. If you worship another God outside the truth, you're worshiping falsehood again. You got to worship the great power of a human being that you call the Lord. And the Lord is the truth, and you have to worship in the truth, not outside the truth, not on the left, not on the right. You're supposed to be at the center of the path that was created for you. And you don't have to be. And it's not that hard. Believe me, try to cross the ocean without the opening sea. That would have been hard. But you're crossing on the fair ground of humanity. You're walking on dry land. You're going in the understanding of reality. God is the truth. And if you can come to that truth and try to understand the power of that truth, you'll go across and you'll be able to understand the other side as well as this side. You see, what happened to the world? Why is the world so evil today? Because nobody worships God. There's nobody that worships God. And the people of religion that tells me that it's because people don't go to church no more are the greatest, breaking of laws that there is in the world. Those are the people that wants to keep practicing falsehood, fabrication, ignorance. They don't give inside their soul the power to understand that God, who is the God of feelings, lives inside of you, and he sends feelings inside of you. And if these feelings are not obeyed according to his laws and his decrees of the understanding of the reality of all that is in truth, then what happened? You're going to fall aside. You're going to fall to one side of the way that you should have walked. Or you're going to fall to the other side, the side of the false prophet and the people that goes to church every week. Try to understand God. If you want to understand God, read the Bible. Read Him. Try to understand your own soul and match it with the Bible. I start to read from the book of Joshua there. You know, the angel, that's the angel of freedom. And as long as you have the angel of freedom, it's to be able to set free. And I don't want to bring some show on the book of Joshua just yet, because it's too powerful to be able to understand the freedom of the Lord. The freedom that the Lord has created you to be. And in the great power of milk and honey, which is your natural feelings. All the natural feelings that you have inside of yourself are holy. Why do you have to call them sin? Why did you have to call them evil? Why did you have to call them adultery? Why did you have to call them other name than what they are? They are holy. And inside of you, there's a holiness of truth there. And if you follow the truth, the Lord your God, you will come to understand the great power of that Lord. Go ahead, Rita.
If your very own brother, or your son or daughter, or the wife you love, or your closest friend secretly entices you, saying, "Let us go and worship other gods," gods that neither you nor your fathers have known, gods of the peoples around you, whether near or far, from one end of the land to the other, do not yield to him or listen to him. Show him no pity. Do not spare him or shield him. You must certainly put him to death. Your hand must be the first in putting him to death, and then the hands of all the people. Stone him to death, because he tried to turn you away from the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. Then all Israel will hear and be afraid, and no one among you will do such an evil thing again.
You got to understand, you go back to 330 AD when noble content kind of established Christianity, kind of have the big cumulative council that they have and designate that Jesus is the Son of God and all the baloney of the past, you know what I mean? You see, all of this was a fabrication now. You know, this is no proof that it came from heaven. This is the power that, you see, what happened is it became a new chapters in humanity, where Constantinople said, oh, I mean, I'm going to start worshiping Christianity because they make... You see, the great power of that was God said, okay, now, who is on my side here? And who is not on my side? Come to my side next to me here. Or die in the great earthquake of the understanding of the time, where you will come to this day to be buried in a tomb somewhere underneath the ground, where you can never escape the understanding of death itself. Because you live in debt, because you live according to the laws of these religions. And that makes your spirit dead, because you don't make anything for yourself that's part of God's knowledge. In order for you to grow into God, you've got to learn to love the Lord without no interfering from anybody else but from yourself. And you got to listen to your heart in order to understand the creation that the Lord has made for you. See, what happened is religion became the boss over you. And religion, Catholic Church or Christianity, or even back in the 15th century, the medieval time, everything switched around. And everybody changed different rules in different time. But the creation, from the very beginning of the creation, was the creation the way it is. And when these council and all this stuff happened, and you have all these Lutherans and power to change and fabricate something new out of it, did not match the old world. The old world, the baby was born, and he grew up to be a man. And then it grew up to be an old man. And the great power of that was life itself. We see what happened is somebody came and changed the situation there and promised you a heaven outside the truth. Because there's no such thing as the heaven of the Christian world or the heaven of the Catholic Church or the heaven of the Muslim world. What happened here is somebody fabricated something that was not part of the past, of the understanding of the creation itself. See, we went outside the creation to create religion because you had to be, everybody was filled of arrogant, and they all tried to come up with the right ideas about it, and they keep on messing up and changing the rule and changing the situation so we can educate ourselves with religion, with the theology of religion, and it come to a point that the whole thing was destroyed inside the human seed. And then you could not understand the power of yourself and the glory of intelligence. What happened? Why? So he tells you here, a prophet is someone that comes with something different than what was created from the foundation of the world. Foundation of the world was created for life, and life was life. But what happened is somebody came and messed up with it. Somebody can say, well, my intelligence tells me that I can make rules on people, and if the people can follow my rule, then they'll go to heaven because they follow my rule. But that was a fabrication. You have to live with the conscience of a human being that from the creation, the foundation of the creation until now. You cannot change the rule. Catholic Church came and changed all the rules. You know, the 10 Commandments are all changed, and there's nothing in their teaching that's part of the creation itself. All they did is make rules from people that didn't make any sense. And they said, well, I know better because I'm a pope. I can make all kinds of stuff, and you have to believe me because I'm creating a new world here. And man, the man that creates a new world, forget about the old world that was perfect to begin with. Why did they have to restrain the world the way it was and fabricate religion to a point of getting into a person's bed and tell him who he can sleep with, who cannot sleep with, or getting into a person's life and telling him that he has to belong to that God? You see, all these false gods of religion are all around us, and people are trying to fit people with these gods, and they do a pretty good job at it. Because you look at the whole world right now, and the whole world come and say, okay, now, see what happened to these priests that changed the situation from a man taking a woman for his woman, or a man taking a woman in the understanding so he can have the glory of both sex inside his bed. See, you can't have total intelligence unless you have both sex to agree on something. Because both sex, from the very beginning of the creation, has to match together with the understanding so you can have full intelligence. You know, a male home, they have half the intelligence, and the female home, they have the other half of intelligence, and you have to come together in a compromise of human understanding in the common sense of intelligence in order to form the truth. Now, what happened to these priests that didn't have a woman around them? You know, they just did what they feel like it, like a male, and next thing you know, you have the mess that the church has got on its hand right now. And they're trying to fix it, believe me, with new fabrication, new laws. You know what I mean? They're trying to make a new concert in February now that's going to bring new laws to any man that wants to be a priest. You see, this is what destroys the world. This is what makes people evil. It's when you have someone that thinks he's in charge of others and makes rules, it's against the fabrication of the understanding of the truth. And these people make the understanding real. Oh, you got to listen to me. Why should we listen to you? You fail life, you know. And the thing is, what bothers me the most here, the Catholic Church is going to fall right now. You can see the great Babylon falling from the sky, the woman on the seventh hill, you know, in the model of man, the seven great model of man, you know what I mean? And it's going to fall apart. And you know what's going to happen to the people that believes in that? They're going to fall apart. Because right now they have the church to hold them in the faith that they keep for themselves. But let's say that church fall overnight right now. Who is going to be hurt right now? The poor people that did not get out of that evil religion when it was time. They're going to fall apart. They're going to leave faith, like thousands and millions of them are going to leave faith, and they won't even believe in God no more. What's going to happen, and who created that? The false prophet. All these false prophets created that. Now we come to a judgment of the Lord. What did you believe in life? What did you, as a person, believe in life? You believed that these false people were men of God, and you had to go to their church to get the benefit of God into your life. You have to go to their understanding in order to understand God. When is that all going under a razor and be erased from the earth? And the Catholic Church will be erased from the earth. I tell you, what's going to happen to the people? What's going to happen to the people that has no knowledge in God whatsoever? Catholic that don't even understand the great basic. And I can see them in society speaking, you know. I listen to them on Sunday morning sometime talking about, oh man, I've been to church, we went to communion. What happened when all this thing falls apart? Going to happen to the point that a human being will break to pieces. And when they break to pieces, you think that the church is broken now, you're going to see the heart of humanity break to pieces. Because people are not preparing themselves. There's no one in the church that can help the people of that church. Nothing. There's not a single human being in the whole church that can get out and say, well, you made a mistake, we can fix it. You can't fix it unless you leave the church and come towards God yourself. Go ahead, Rita.
If you hear it said about one of the towns the Lord your God is giving you to live in, that wicked men have arisen among you and have led the people of their town astray, saying, let us go and worship other gods, gods you have not known, then you must inquire, probe, and investigate it thoroughly. And if it is true, and it has been proved that this detestable thing has been done among you, you must certainly put to the sword all who live in that town. Destroy it completely, both its people and its livestock.
Okay, you really got to come to understand this paragraph here. When I was reading this, I felt inside my soul the understanding of this great power, to be able to understand that. You see, when you have people that fools people, you know, there's some guy that comes, you know, as a charlatan or a great power to fool people with his think and his little trick and his little magic trick, you know. On Sunday morning, he blesses some bread and the false magic that's inside of him, and the people out there believing, they answer to his prayer and everything else. What happened when all of this stuff that is not true? Because you got to know that the form of intelligence has the power of the truth inside of you. And what happened when the power of the truth is being challenged by the stupidity of what you were taught? You see, this is the power that I feel the worst about. And I look at the people of the world and I say to myself many, many times in my soul, and when I read the scriptures and I can see these people believing in that so deeply that it's almost unbelievable what they believe, you know, that these magicians, these false magicians comes in front of them like it's real. Like it's real that they change that bread into the body of Christ. It's real that they take water and they bless it and make it holy. but it's not real. It's a fabrication of stupidity that they can stand in front of a couple and bless them and say they're married for life. Now, these people come to hate each other 5, 10 years down the road. It's not real, because it's only a blessing of an understanding that comes from what is not real, and then it lives in their life into the pretense of reality. And it's not making any sense. It's only a pretense. Oh, I'm married to that person. I pretend to be that man's wife or that woman's husband. But the truth is that you should be set free in the knowledge of reality, where a human being comes to feel what is not the truth, because when really disaster come on a marriage, they don't feel that. But then you have people that get married 4 or 5 times in some kind of a religious church of some kind, because they think that's the only way to live. They cannot understand the purpose of being free and understanding the creation the way they were created to be. What happened to it, to these people, that breaks the laws of the understanding of reality that is the truth? Why? Why did these people break that law? Because they think they got to be free to have sex with a woman every night, which is not true. It's a big lie. A woman don't feel like that all the time. And a man has the better desire than a woman. So when it mashes together, it breaks to pieces. You know, and the great power of it is that these females that marry these men sometimes has no feeling for sex. And the thing is, they suffer on the other side of the altar just as hard as the people that are sexy, because the great power of them tell them. Now, if these people were both free to live according to themselves, then maybe the female can have pleasure from a man once in a while, but cannot have pleasure every night. And the man can have pleasure with a different woman, and it would be perfectly part of the freedom of the heart. See, that heart is a feeling, and you cannot mess with that heart, and you cannot change the rule of that heart, because if you do change the rule of the heart, you're breaking the very simple power of the truth itself, and that is the Lord. That's why the Lord said, I'll place my curse on any religion that would come against the truth. And all these religions came, and they made themselves models. 7 model, 7, they live in the modelity of what they think. And see, these people, they forbid themselves to accomplish their feelings. And then they think that, oh no, I believe in God. That's not believing in God. Believing in God is believing in your feelings and the feelings of your reality. So you can come to understand that the Lord, the great power of the Lord, is to be able to match this feeling of reality that's inside of you. Go ahead, read over.
Gather all the plunder of the town into the middle of the public square, and completely burn the town and all its plunder as a whole burnt offering to the Lord your God. It is to remain a ruin forever, never to be rebuilt. None of those condemned things shall be found in your hands, so that the Lord will turn from his fierce anger. He will show you mercy, have compassion on you, and increase your numbers, as he promised on oath to your forefathers, because you obey the Lord your God, keeping all his commands that I am giving you today, and doing what is right in his eyes.
You got to come understand that you got to burn these things down. Now, a lot of people said, you tried to destroy the church. No, I'm burning it down. I'm getting rid of it. You know, the thing is, if you want to follow the Lord, you got to take these religions seriously. These religions fool people. They hurt people. They do wrong to people. And if you don't go against them and give them as much suffering as they've given these people, then you're not working on the side of the Lord. You have to bring him to the center of town and burn that stupidity and ignorance of it. You destroy it forever so it doesn't come back on earth in the understanding. You see, what happened in the past, people accepted false religion. And everybody went for false religion. I remember when I was a kid, everybody was a Catholic in the town that I grew up. And everybody was talking about that. And you have to follow the rule of the priest and everything that there was, because it was a religion of fanatic, stupid ignorance that was fabricated to hurt people. You know, to make rules on you. And then if there was a person in town that did not practice Catholicism or live with a woman, I mean, they were persecuted to the maximum of the power of human thinking. And man, they used to have people, you know, get out and used to yell at these people. You're a bum, you live without being married. And, oh man, there was things done in the past that was almost unbelievable, because the theology that they were taught was a bunch of fabrication. So what happened is, if a person lived his life according to the truth, and you know, he made love to a woman being married, oh my God, that was a terrible thing. And the woman was even more persecuted than the male. The male was forgiven a little bit, but not the woman. The woman, man, I tell you, if a woman got pregnant and she was not married, oh my God, we can persecute her. We can have that was giving them the free will to hurt this woman and to say the most evil things to that person. You know, you see what happened in the past is the pain of the past is what you have to come and expose the fraud. And if you don't expose the fraud, what happened is you get the same thing again, and unless you burn, take that to the center of town and burn it. Center of town is inside of you now. That's not on the outside. You don't go there with a fire and burn people now. It comes inside of you. You have to destroy it inside yourself. That's where you live, inside yourself. So you got to come to understand that these things come in the center of your town, and you can destroy it inside yourself, and you can say anything you want against it because it's only a fabrication. You got to expose that fraud to people around you so they can come to understand that that was just a fabrication of knowledge that was not part of the truth and the understanding of the truth. You see, what happened to it? Why did this world became so wicked, so evil? And you think that it was evil now? It was evil worse then, because people would see the most evil thing. You listen to a person that's prejudiced against the black and the things that he says against the black, or a black man that says things against the white. Prejudice was in the understanding. And we can see that prejudice today in society. People are so ignorant of what the other people feel because they couldn't give a clue of nothing against the feeling of another person. You can call a person all kinds of names, and if the person retaliates and tells you off, oh my God, this person is an evil person. It's all evil, and you know, I mean, you see, the power of a human is to be fair. Love people in justice. Love people in the understanding of fairness, and love people in unity. Now you have a whole town that's divided by the deeds of people, by whoever had sex with who, and they used to have a whole bunch of women that would have baby shower, and they would talk, and they would never give a baby shower to a girl that had sex outside marriage. It was a forbidden thing. It was, I remember there was a girl that, she got pregnant and out of wedlock, and the whole time, and somebody wanted to give her a baby shower, and man, I tell you, that person, the one that gave the baby shower, got really blasted to pieces because it doesn't match the understanding of the other people and what the church was teaching them. You see, they didn't teach compassion. They didn't teach the power of seeing the heart of another human being. They taught that people were good and other people were evil. And the evil people did what they expect them to do, the stupidity of having sex without marriage, the stupidity of stealing something when your kids were hungry. Everything that people did according. You see, these 10 commandments were made in the understanding. Now you take adultery now. Adultery is what they call our sexuality, which is not true. It's so far away from the truth. Why would they make a name like adultery when adultery is really what the priest does in church? He fabricates falsehood and teach it to the people. That's adultery. When you fabricate something and you make it up, or somebody above you make it up, and you transfer it to another person, it becomes adultery. It's become an orgy of adultery. And the adultery that they don't understand, they use it for sexuality because there was a strong feelings in sex. So they blame these people for having that feelings. But really, the real adultery is what the priest did on Sunday morning to convert people in stupidity and ignorance against the truth, against the false God. See what it tells you here? Don't go listen to a man that tells you that he does wonder in his life, and then he teaches you to go to a false God. This is what this thing is all about. It's to tell you not to worship false God. It tells you that the power of yourself inside the glory of intelligence is to worship one true God in the disgrace of laws and the great power of the intelligence of laws. Once you do that, you come to the understanding of this great power that's inside yourself to understand. And if you don't, if the Bible tells you here, things will not go well for you. That means that you're going to be cursed by the Lord. That means that you're going to be part of a false religion. That means that you're going to be part of a falsehood. And you got to protect the falsehood with your life. And that's what the Lord tells you. It won't go well for you. And your life will be a mess because of it. Because you cannot hold yourself in the sustain of power that is the truth. If you cannot sustain the truth inside your heart, because some false prophet comes and gives you a theory of his own that does not match the scriptures and the disgrace of the Lord your God, then you say what? Because the Bible was written to fool people, not to help you, to fool you. And if you don't go to the other side of your spiritual understanding to understand it, you can't understand what's written in that book, because it was not meant to understand by the mind. It was meant to understand by feelings. You understand the feelings. When you see a word in there that is part of a feeling, then you have to identify the word. Like Joshua, I just tell you about Joshua. Freedom, that's a feeling inside of you. And then it's a name in here. And it looks like a man. But here it's the feelings. And when that feelings come, you have to order that feelings in the understanding of the reality of truth. And what happened is, if you believe in Joshua the man or Moses, Moses is the lawgiver. And that becomes the feelings. Feeling is the law. That's not a man named Moses or a man named Joshua. It's a man inside, it's a feeling inside of you that has an understanding, has feelings, and it makes sense, and it stands up to the truth, and the power of the truth lives inside your soul when you understand these things to the right side of things. So God can come to give you the great power of the truth that's inside of you. You know, you got to come to understand this great power of a human being. Go ahead, read us some more.
Well, that would be another chapter.
Now, this is the end of that chapter?
Yes.
Let me see now, the clean and unclean. Yeah, we can do something on clean and unclean. You know, we only got a few more minutes, you know.
Okay, chapter 14, clean and unclean food. You are the children of the Lord your God. Do not cut yourselves or shave the front of your heads for the dead, for you are a people holy to the Lord your God. Out of all the peoples on the face of the earth, the Lord has chosen you to be his treasured possession.
Now, what is clean now? And what is unclean? What makes sense of the truth is clean. And that's what they keep on telling you. Make an offering of a lamb, 1-year-old lamb without defect. See, what you believe, okay, when you offer a lamb on the altar, you offer your understanding of being simple, the simplicity of the heart. Now, you see people walk around with cross and everything. Oh, they look like they're God's people. You see, once you you got to offer that sacrifice on the altar. You're not allowed to wear a cross on your neck. You're not allowed to work a medal of some saint on you and believe in that. You're not allowed even to have a tattoo on your body. That you can have a tattoo, but not a tattoo of God or Jesus or whatever it is on you, because it's not the truth. You know what I mean? You're not allowed, you have to offer the lamb, because inside of you there's a little animal there. And that little animal will feel on the sides of, you know, arrogant. Yeah, okay. So that little animal that let's say you offer a goat on the altar. I mean that you have to defend the truth with your very life. You cannot break that and say, well, you know, I'm going to let these people get away with the stupidity they just said. You got to defend the truth. You got to defend the truth. If you offer a donkey on the altar, what's going to happen now? See, these are little animals that's inside of you. You're stubborn. And you have to order that stubbornness inside of you so you can come to understand that your animal has to be beaten down to the earth. So you can come to understand the great power of a human being. And if you offer a bull on the altar, then you have to offer your ignorance. Lord, I've been ignorant all my life. I don't know nothing. You have to offer that on the altar. This is what your animal, the offering of your animal means. Now, every time you offer an animal to the Lord, you offer the things that makes you like an animal. And so you can come to be a divine power of human understanding. You know, you got to understand that the power that you have inside yourself to understand this glory of intelligence is that you have to beat your animal to the ground in order to rise in the understanding. You have to be above, and you have to kill the lamb on the altar, and you have to eat all the meat until morning comes. So, in other words, you got to practice humility. You got to practice humility with your soul. In other words, you got to say, well, I'm not going to make myself look like I'm a god, or have a thing around my neck that makes me a Catholic priest, or the funny little dress that the Pope is wearing around with a funny little hat, or the funny... You see, these people are not worshiping God. If they were to worship God, they would have to put their animal on the altar like the simplicity of mankind. But when they don't do that, you know what I mean? And they come to you, oh, I'm a big pope. You all come and worship me. You see, that's not worshiping God. That's worshiping yourself. And when you do that, when you see a man with a big cross on his neck, you know what I mean? He's worshiping himself because he wants you to see Christ inside of him. And that's not what Christ is. Christ is the common sense of intelligence. And you cannot make any kind of an idol that symbolizes that person or that's feeling. You have to come to understand the great glory of human intelligence. We're out of time right now, but I'd like to talk more about this. Maybe we'll do another show on this sometime, because it's so important to understand the offering that's on the altar and in the sight of God for the purpose of intelligence. God, who is the truth, is the understanding of that truth for the reality. Okay, I got to wrap it up. I'm out of time, so I thank you for tuning in and come to the understanding of the power of yourself. Okay, good night, and God bless you all.